we are in the Navigant Credit Union Broadcast Center today on a Tuesday for my hour of arts and entertainment news. We had a pretty intense snowstorm this morning, but it looks like things are pretty cleared up. Everyone should be back up and running. So we're going to jump right into my first guest. I'm super excited to speak with Berndt. He is lead singer of the band Killgore, which I know many of us, Rhode Islanders especially, remember Killgore from the 90s. You guys were killing it back then. Just released your first EP after 20 years.
20 years.
We have a lot to talk about.
Okay.
Let's first jump back in time a little bit and talk about Killgore kind of in their heyday. So this was like mid-90s. You guys were like really making an impact on the scene and doing some big things nationally. Ozfest, touring on bills with other kind of big name acts. So tell us a little bit about what it was like kind of in the heyday.
It was, very different. Getting people out to shows, period, was easy. You just kind of, some of the best shows I've ever seen in my life were just word of mouth. You just pop into Club Babyhead and all of a sudden Nirvana was playing. I was like, wow, okay, cool.
Those were the good old days.
Yeah, it was kind of like that back then. We really started playing professionally. We formed in 90, but started playing professionally in 93. Put out a couple of pretty successful and popular demos, and we got picked up by a subsidiary of Warner Brothers in 94. Put out our first record in 95 called Blue Collar Solitude, and from there we just were on the road a lot.
Awesome.
And it just kind of snowballed from there.
How did Warner Brothers get you guys on their radar?
Well, back before the internet, the only way you could really get people to hear your stuff was through a publicist.
Right.
In some ways, either on a small kind of local level or on a larger national level, depending on really how much you wanted to pay.
Yeah.
We had a publicist in Long Island that would just really get our demo tapes out to, before there were blogs, there was fanzines.
Yeah.
So getting it out to every fanzine that somebody had, something that they put together at a Kinko's and stapled together.
Right.
All of those places, in college radio as well, and it got floated to a number of record labels. And right around the fall of 94, we had about 3 record labels that were interested in the band, and we ended up going with a subsidiary of Warner Brothers, just because it felt right, and it just felt right. Yeah.
And for a while it was really popping. Like you guys, like you said, you were touring.
Yeah.
What kind of made this come to its conclusion, let's say,
well,
at the time?
The core of the band, we, as I mentioned, we'd all formed in 1990. We all went to LaSalle Academy in Providence, and we kind of grew from that music program that they had there. And slowly, the core of the band started breaking away, and we lost our chief songwriter, who was back in the band, Brian McKenzie. He left the band in '96. We carried on as a 4-piece without him and tried to, write the rest of the songs, and ironically, it was the most popular we became as right after Brian left, just because we had a tremendous amount of opportunities. Ozfest came about, our second album came around, there was a bigger push at radio, but it just never really felt the same. I started getting really tired of the road, and it's not the glamorous lifestyle that everybody
I think
puts it out to
that's
be.
one of the biggest misconceptions, like that this glamorous rock star lifestyle is just always great, and it's
you've got a
really
recording
exhausting.
contract and you're riding a limousine.
No, it's like a bus usually.
No, we
not
like
even.
for us in the early days it was like 5 smelly guys crammed into a van,
Nice.
eating ham and cheese sandwiches. Right. That's why I went vegetarian. And just,
Too many bad experiences with that.
Just bad. Literally begging people to allow us to sleep on their floors. Now it's easy. You just get on the internet and you say, hey, you're the opening band. Can you let me sleep?
Yeah,
you
sure.
got a place for us to
Work
stay.
it out, yeah.
Back then, you couldn't do any of that
Right.
stuff. You were at the mercy of just the kindness of strangers, literally. So.
Right. So now we get to this sort of 20-year gap. And in the interim, I think most of the members of the band continued to make music, usually on their own, as did you.
Yep.
Kind of leaning away from the hardcore thing. You do a little bit more roots rock, kind of bluegrassy type of stuff. So talk to us a little bit about your solo music thing.
Sure. I being in a metal band and not writing really metal music, I was never, a proficient guitar player to write metal music, but I always wrote these kind of like Chuck Berry, Johnny Cash kind of songs, kind of simple, but timeless kind of melody, kind of like that's what I really gravitated towards. So once I left Killgore in '99, and as a musician, it just doesn't stop, like there's just a piece of you that wants to keep going. So I pretty much stopped playing music for a couple of years, but I got really into country music, like Waylon Jennings, Merle Haggard, Johnny Cash, Hank Williams, about 2003, 2002, 2003. And I did a couple of country bands for a few years, and I had a blast with it. We would pack a lot of the local clubs here in Providence, and people would know me from the old days and kind of like scratch
Are
their
you
chin.
the same guy? Yeah.
Like, from Killgore? Like, yeah, that's me. And it just kind of evolved into a little bit more rock and roll, kind of like Creedence Clearwater meets like Neil Young and Bruce Springsteen kind of a thing now.
Right.
And I still do that. It's called Berndt and the Orphans. We're going to release a record this year.
Nice.
We just kind of put it on hold because of the Killgore record. Actually, my best friend and fellow orphan actually produced the record with me.
Oh, cool.
Or us. So.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, really cool. So, was there any bad blood within the band?
Yeah.
Oh, there was.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah, absolutely.
I didn't know if it was a sort of mutual,
No.
like this is just not the time anymore.
No. It just over the years, I've known Bill and Brian, Brian McKenzie, the guitar player, and Bill Sullivan, the drummer. I've known both of them close to 30 years.
Wow.
So I've known them, as long as anybody I've ever known. And there were good times, there was bad times.
Right.
And I would honestly, at this point in our lives, the good times definitely outweigh the bad times. But yeah, there was some bad blood. We ended up doing a reunion in 2007. And that really cleared the air. Like,
oh, cool.
My mother-in-law passed away from breast cancer in 2006, and I had this benefit that I was putting together for Susan G. Komen for breast cancer research and awareness. And my wife said to me, she was like, "We need a really big band." And I said, "Yeah," and I can't find anybody. She was like, "You got to put Killgore." And I was like, "Get out of here!"
Back together,
So we put Killgore back together, but we buried the hatchet.
Yeah.
We got all the skeletons out of the closet, and we just became better friends.
Well, it's
all
sort
the
of
business was,
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, I was going to say I interrupted you, so
No,
I'm sorry.
it's
It's interesting when it's a situation like that where it really puts things in perspective.
Yeah, absolutely.
How short life can be and what things are really important and what things aren't.
Yeah.
So it seems like you guys were sort of able to come together and get over those things that maybe weren't as important as you
And well,
thought.
that's the thing is that when your life becomes you started playing music because there was a passion behind it and there was fun behind it, and then it turns into a business.
Yeah.
And it becomes your entire life. That it is that business, and things just go a little crazy.
Yeah.
And people change for the wrong reasons.
Yeah.
And I changed probably for the wrong reasons. I know some of the other guys in the bands. It just got a little crazy, and now we get along fantastic. It's really
That's great.
great to see. These are some of the oldest friends I have, and we know each other so well. It's really easy to make music with these guys. It's kind of like putting on an old pair of comfortable shoes, and you go, yeah, this is really familiar.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, we're definitely going to talk more about that.
Yeah.
But it's sort of interesting that you buried the hatchet with the guys in the band still 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So it
Yeah.
took a while
It
for
took a
this
while to get
reunion to really come back. So what was the one thing that was like, who picked up the phone or made the text that said, let's do this again?
Yeah,
that was you.
Yeah. And I was the last guy that wanted to do it. I'm just not really a nostalgic kind of guy.
Yeah.
Like I see the old TVs and I go, oh, that's cool and whatnot. But it's not like I want to go back and live in that time
Right.
again. So I always kind of felt like, all right, I've moved on to newer music that I'm doing.
Yeah.
So why do I really want to go back and do something that I've already done? But in a lot of ways, I felt it was because of two things. We left on bad terms, and there was unfinished business. Like it ended wrong.
Yeah.
You know, so I'm glad we were able to get back together 10 years ago and kind of bury the hatchet. And now we're making, I think, some of the best music we've ever made. So
Yeah. So this new EP, Someday This War is Going to End. Here it is, right here, actually. Great reviews.
Yeah.
People are loving it, and one of the things that people are saying is like, you guys haven't lost your mojo, you know, like the special sauce is still there even though all this time has passed, which is amazing. So what was the writing process like when you guys finally got together in the same room again? Did everything just flow? Was it like
yes and no. I had somebody ask me, what was your biggest influence in writing this record? And it's really cocky to say, but I said Killgore was our number one influence in writing this record because, Brian hadn't written a heavy metal song. He went to the route of singer-songwriter in 1996 and hadn't written a heavy metal song since 1996. So we were very, very adamant that it needed to sound like the logical third record that we would have made.
Right.
So it's not that we went back and listened to like our old songs, but it's like we went back to kind of the process of the way that Bill, Brian, and I worked together. Originally, we weren't going to do any new songs. We had a whole bunch of songs from 1996 that we never recorded and released because we didn't know if Brian was going to be able to do it. So we said, let's just do those old songs because nobody's ever heard them. It'd be great if we finally record them and get them out. Brian moved down to Nashville for a job, and the job fell through. And he had this guitar here with him, and he said, I'm just going to try and write some songs. And the very first song, he sent us like an iPhone recording of the second song on the album called The Laws of Gods and Men. Absolutely the heaviest song we've ever written.
Ah,
we
that's
went,
so awesome.
like,
So
well,
he really went
kids,
there with this one.
Oh yeah, like the kid still has it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Oh my gosh,
that's
really cool.
the story.
Yeah. And so it's really cool. I mean, it's such a testament to how talented you guys are that you're able to sort of put on these different hats musically and really still be legit in that genre, which is so specific and really requires a lot of like special skills, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I mean, I think just vocally, you've been doing a lot of different types of singing, but on this type of music, you're really doing like a harsh kind of vocal. What is it like vocally for you? I like all this nerdy, like technical voice stuff. So.
Well, I'll give a tip to the young singers out there: quit smoking. Just quit smoking. I was a very, very heavy smoker back when Killgore was in its heyday, and I always struggled. Live, people would probably tell you that they saw us back then and we were magnificent. No, I always struggled a little bit because I was such a heavy smoker. I quit smoking about 17 years ago.
Awesome, good for you.
And thank you. And it really, really improved my singing. People listen to this and they go, it sounds like you haven't aged.
Yeah.
And it's really because I feel that I've become a better singer over the years. I trying different things, not just doing heavy metal all the time. I think really broadened my palette and allowed me to kind of explore areas where I normally wouldn't have gone in the past. So, I think that's pretty much it.
Yeah.
It's not easy being my age, 45 years old and being a heavy metal singer. There's others out there much older than myself that are still doing it and doing it very, very well. But heavy metal tends to be more of a young person's game.
Yeah, I mean it's very challenging. Yeah. It's a very challenging way of singing, and it requires tons of stamina.
It does.
And your voice just changes through the years. I mean, not even in a bad way. It just kind of changes. So to make your voice sort of get back to a sound that you had 20 years ago can be hard.
It's always kind of been there. One of the country bands that I did was this band called Brimstone Assembly, which featured Morgan Eve Swain from Brownbird. She's now in a band called Huntress and the Holder of Hands. And her mother called the Brimstone Assembly the Iron Maiden of country music. Because, it was, fiddle and upright bass and pedal steel guitar, but I always had this aggressiveness to my voice. I tend to be kind of Glenn Danzig, Elvis Presley kind of shouter, rather than just croon all the time. It goes from croon to shout. So I've never really stopped singing aggressively. It's just the different type of music that I was doing, maybe a little bit different.
Right. Well, you guys did an EP release show here in Rhode Island recently. Was this the first time you guys played out as a band, other than that show 10 years ago, or have you played out before?
We did the reason we got back together in the first place was local legendary producer, a guy by the name of Joe Moody. He recorded a tremendous amount of metal bands, all kinds of rock and roll bands, you name it. He did a lot of different bands here in Rhode Island. He passed away in the beginning of 2016, and a number of 90s popular heavy metal bands decided to get together and do a tribute show for him in 2016, and they asked us to be a part of it, and we knew, me, Bill, and Brian, that we could do it together. Our original bass player, unfortunately, doesn't really play bass all that much anymore. Doesn't really play music. So our last bass player from 1998 is a gentleman by the name of Marty O'Brien, and he has been touring ever since Killgore stopped.
Oh, wow.
And he is right now the touring bass player for Lita Ford. So so it was, hey, do you want to do this? And maybe do it in between when you're out on the road.
Right.
We were able to make it all work. We had an amazing time. The band sounded great, and we all kind of just went, you want to do some more of this? And that's
so
kinda
cool.
how it stopped. Yeah. So we've done, so it's been 3 shows since we got back together in 2016.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
So fan base, is it a lot of your older fan base? You're seeing some fresh faces out there? Is it a mix of both?
Yeah, see all the above.
All the above, yeah.
Well, with the internet now, it's you're able to capture a different audience. You have kind of the old tried and true that supported us from day one, but then you have their kids that are also like into it, and they're more active on the internet, and you'll get like 15-year-olds or teenagers that coming out of the woodworks just because they heard their dad's favorite band from way back in the day. So we're seeing a mixed mash of fans, which is really cool to see. The last couple of shows that we've played, thankfully, have been all ages shows. So to see out in the audience and see like little 12-year-old kids and 10-year-old kids,
wild, right?
It's amazing.
Yeah.
It's really cool to see. We never saw that back in the day.
Yeah. Well, it's so amazing. I'm sure everyone is really happy that you guys decided to come back and put out this EP, which is available on your website, killgoreband.com. We'll also have the information on golocalprov.com. Jay, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah,
be sure to check out the website for upcoming performances, and Jay, of course, will be releasing some new music, hopefully sometime this year, so definitely stay in the loop with that. We are going to take a very quick pause as we set up for my next guest, so stick around.